back. Now, Barbara, I can't officially take us out of executive session?
You have to do that now.
Okay, so I'll make a motion then to take us out of executive session.
Come out of executive session.
Gotcha. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All right, so then the next item on the agenda, if I could find it again, is continued discussion, appeal number 227772, area variance, Alpine Commons multifamily workforce housing, seeking an area variance, section 24037 and 240-81.7 of district regulations in an SC zoning district where a maximum of 93 dwelling units is allowed. The applicant is proposing 144 dwelling units, thus requesting a variance for an increase in the density for mixed uses to allow for 51 additional dwelling units to be constructed. Where 2.5 stories or 35 feet maximum building height is allowed, the applicant is requesting an increase to 3.5 stories or 50 feet building height, thus requesting a variance of 1 story and or 15 feet in building height. Where 282 parking spaces is required for 144 dwelling units, the applicant is requesting a decrease in required parking spaces to 238 parking spaces, thus requesting a variance of 44 less parking spaces. The property is located at 1404 Route 9 and is identified as tax grid number 61570270773 in the town of Wappinger. Lead agency January 31st, 2023. Okay. For the record, please, your name.
Yes, good evening, Chairman and members of the Zoning Board of
Good
Appeals. My
evening.
name is Neil Alexander, I'm a partner at the law firm of Cuddy and Fader. I am joined tonight by my near right, Brian Donato from Dakota Partners, and also Brendan Lloyd to his right from Dakota Partners. When we were last here in front of you, there were some questions raised which as to really the variances that you read not being necessarily the appropriate variances to create a mixed-use project of the scope and scale that we had talked about on this property. As a result, we had waited for a while for a letter and a determination from your code enforcement officer, and we hadn't received one, so we wrote our own letter, about 15 pages of what we thought were the variances and why we were entitled to them. I think we've sent that at like 4 o'clock at night, and I think Code Enforcement Officer Roberti issued her letter like less than 12 hours later, so they crossed. I think it's fair to say that she hadn't had an opportunity to see and study our letter. That is why we asked you for an adjournment when you put us on the June 13th agenda, to give her some time to take a look at what we had written, and potentially, I think, part of what we're going to ask you for tonight, and per a letter we sent to you 4 hours ago, which answered some of her additional open questions as to fact verification. I think ultimately we're going to need a little bit more fine-tuning as to exactly what those variances are, but I think what we really all would benefit from, this has been going on since November. I think it wouldn't hurt us if we actually just took a couple minutes to page turn our letter and go over and explain what we're proposing as a project and what variances we believe we do and don't need and why, and a little bit less on why we believe they're warranted, but also going over the record. I think there'd be value in that. I'm not trying to spend the next hour and a half doing that, but I think there would be value. If there's something you want us to do first, we can, or say something first, we can, because it looks like
Which letter are we referring to, Neil?
So the June 8th letter we wrote.
The June 8th letter, not
which
the one.
amended our application from November. It didn't change the project, but
Right.
by example, we don't believe we need a parking variance,
Right.
right? By other example, we believe that there is a residential area. In that letter, we talked about being 16.3 acres. We sent you a letter hours before this meeting,
Right.
that we had worked with our engineer, and that net lot area is 16.06. I think acres is what we're saying now, which changes the math on the density. But I think it wouldn't hurt to have us go through this just to make sure we're hearing each other correctly and that we don't have disagreements and we can clarify what we believe those variances are, subject to obviously the initial interpreter of the code issuing a new letter confirming that, but also headed towards scheduling a public hearing for July.
Right,
Um,
right. Do you guys feel it necessary to read, for Neil to go through that letter?
Well, I think we're all in
I think-
agreement in terms of Barbara's determination,
I mean, I
correct?
think that was one of the, that was
That
one
was
of the
a
things
stopping
we
point.
talked about is your submission today.
Right,
Um,
okay.
And I think we're all in agreement that you no longer need the parking variance.
Okay.
And that I think the board's in agreement that we're only looking at density and height.
And height,
Okay. And
correct.
And without putting words in your code enforcement officer, I mean, I'm trying to be clear with you all, but also not make code enforcement officer Roberti uncomfortable but, so the density, subject to her having a chance to spend a little more time looking at that map from our engineer, licensed engineer. What we're saying, is that based on how she defined what is net lot residential area in her letter of June 9th, we've calculated because of the access, as you saw, that we're going to have to build and the other work in the area we're using for parking that's remote, but still parking for the project. We calculated as, I'm just gonna use round numbers, a little like 17.26, I think. And then we backed out about 1.2 acres of steep slopes. So we believe we're around 1606.
Right.
And then you would multiply that by 3, reduce it down. And so now if we were talking about it, subject to further clarification, just trying to keep this moving along and making sure we're hearing each other, or I'm hearing you, really. You know what's in your mind. I want to make sure I'm hearing you.
Sure.
Is that we're looking at a variance from 48 to the 144 we're proposing on the density.
Right.
And then I think, I'm not going to bore everybody with the height thing. I think we did. We spent a lot of time on that as to why, between the definition of height in the building code, and then we provided you with those sightline studies and so forth.
And that wasn't the
Correct.
subject of the interpretation, so
Correct.
that's unchanged.
And then also that means that the ratio is now correct.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha. I think I'm almost caught up,
Okay.
Chairman.
Go ahead,
What
Kim.
else am I missing?
Continue.
Okay. So let me try to write some notes here for myself, sorry. Okay, so no need for parking variance, no need for ratio variances. So then I think it really comes down a little bit towards the arguments that we proffered, which I don't know if you want to discuss at all tonight, or you want to wait to the public hearing to get into it. But basically, the essence, without on a thumbnail level, our position on the, that fly is very persistent. Waiting for it's ready for the public hearing, the fly, so we might as well schedule it for July. In any event, I think the evidence in the record to date on the visual and the height and the stories speaks for itself. And I don't think I'm not going to go over that. I think first of all, our architect from Thriven did a great job and was here and can come back for the public hearing to discuss that evidence again. I think from our perspective on the density issue, what is historically the elements of density are when you have more of residential, then the potential is for more traffic. We gave you our traffic study. Potential for more students. We gave you the school district's information and the information they've filed and recorded with NYSED, New York State Education Department, about enrollment being roughly called 20% for the purposes of keeping the conversation moving tonight. And we've also given you an analysis of other projects. It was not easy, by the way, because as you saw, the last rental multifamily project that is 60 years ago in the town.
Yeah.
So, and even if you do the math, I did it, did some rough math as I was writing this evening's letter, but didn't include it because it was getting long enough. Even if you back out the rough math using 1606 acres instead of 16.3 acres, you're roughly in that same comparable level to those 10 projects that we had showed you in the village and the town. So again, from a character and community, the comparables are proving it out, as well as the appropriateness of density. So when I think of the density, like I said, it's sort of comparables, traffic, schools, and I think we passed muster on all of those arenas. And then I would ask you to, take a look at the Adelot quote, the quote from the Adelot case by the court in our papers in the way back of that June 8th letter, because I think it really speaks a lot to this notion of substantiality of a variance. And what it really gets at is the notion is just because it's mathematically substantial doesn't mean anything if it has no effect, right? And that's why I'm connecting back to extra density means extra traffic, extra schools, and then what does it feel like inside an 86-acre parcel or a 16 to 17-acre side
Right,
parcel?
but substantial is somewhat subjective, right?
I think the court's not saying that anymore. I think the court's saying is it has to be actually connected to an adverse effect. It can't just be, oh, you want to go down to 10 feet, right, where a 100-foot setback is, but it's 10 feet from the top of a steep slope, and someone lives at the bottom of it, and there's intervening topography, slopes, and so forth. They're not going to hear it. They're not going to see it. They're not going to know from it. It's a mathematical issue, but it actually has no effect, impact, or impairment.
Right. Okay.
And I'll what I wrote speaks for itself, and you can talk to counsel about that. But
Right.
that's sort of our thought process.
Got it. Follow you. So I think for tonight's purposes, right, we did get your letter at 5:55 this evening.
Yes.
Which we really didn't have a whole lot of time to go through that. We did discuss it briefly in executive session and touched on some points in it. I think, for discussion and for purposes of a public hearing, and publishing, we're okay with the 16.06.
Mm-hmm.
And really in an effort to kind of move things along, right? Because we really haven't had a whole lot of time to digest that. But in an effort to, again,
Yes.
to move things along and, progress to ultimately to a public hearing, we're okay with the 16.06. I think, Jim, the next step here then, I think would be to schedule a public hearing.
Yes.
Now, we'd like to do that. We're only going to have one meeting in July, and we're going to have one meeting in August. The one in July is going to be on the 25th. So we want to schedule your public hearing for the one in August for the 22nd of August. Because we are also going then to make a motion to have, Malcolm draft a negative deck for consideration. And he's gonna need that time to do that.
That's fine.
He'll also require some information from you, so he can talk to you directly to get that to him.
If the board authorizes me to communicate with the applicant in
Absolutely,
term?
yeah.
Should make a motion.
So I'll make a motion to authorize Malcolm to communicate.
I'll second.
Do we need to vote on that?
We have a vote? Okay, so we have a second, we have a roll call?
Yes.
Mr. Delacorte?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzini?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Gallardo?
Yes.
Thank you.
The 22nd, Pete, you said?
The 22nd will be the public hearing.
Just
Of
motion
August.
to set it,
Say it again?
motion to set the public hearing.
Oh, sorry. Motion, please, to set the public hearing for August 22nd.
Do you need us to do that, or you?
I'm
can-
making a motion.
Okay,
Second.
I'll second. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you.
So, we had a brief discussion regarding the original EAF. I don't think the changes, one of the things you may want to do is just to see if any of that changed.
Yep.
And then I noticed a couple of, and I don't know if it's a function of what's on the website or not, There was some things regarding stormwater, and I think the school district box was blank. But
Okay.
we can go back with that. So I think the
Yeah, we
first
can
thing,
work back and forth
we
with that,
can,
for sure.
we can look at that just to make sure. And then the planning board had sent a letter identifying some items. And so, you know, density, parking, height, visual impact we talked about. The planning board had raised an issue regarding light. I don't think you necessarily need a lighting plan, but maybe if you just, I mean,
We can substantiate that in our area, that at the, we'll get like a foot candle measurement at the property line, instead of like a photometric,
right.
because that we work on with the planning board when we
Yeah.
get there, but we can at least set a maximum at the property line.
I mean, it's in the code as well. You can
Is
just,
it, there's, okay. So-
the code is very detailed, and you can go to it and say,
Okay.
you know, these are, we're going to comply with the section.
Yep.
And then there was, and I don't know if this was ever really discussed with respect to blasting. I don't know if blasting was anticipated or not. And that's a question on the EAF, so.
I will need to talk to our engineer about that. I don't have an answer for you this evening.
And associated with that is cut and fill.
Okay.
And then there's a question regarding transit access. Does the, is the bus stop at the bottom of the hill?
It's at the corner of Hopewell and,
Okay,
Route
So it's
9.
just up the street, it's just up 9 from the site? Or no, down,
Down.
south?
okay.
south.
Okay.
But we can.
And I don't know if, you know, if you want to reach out to the county and see if they'd even consider moving the, you know, a bus stop in there.
We can contact them.
And then, I guess there's pedestrian access shown on the site plan.
Okay.
So what was that last one?
Pedestrian
Pedestrian circulation.
And county planning did issue a local concern letter.
I believe so, yeah.
I think it was, well, it's in the file, and it's definitely on the website, on the town website, so.
Got anything else?
Yeah, my question, looking at your letter from June 8th and also the most recent one,
Yeah.
you make reference to traffic analysis that was done when you were before the town board. Has that been submitted to this board? Is that part of this board's
It was
record?
actually attached to the EAF that was circulated for lead agency by the
Perfect.
ZBA.
Then we're good to go. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that that was in this
Yep.
record, yeah. I think that's it for me. But if anything comes up,
Please, yes, we will gladly get you that information. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
See you in August.
Now we have next
Good
set.
summer.
Right.
Enjoy the.
You got it. Yeah, we'll see you. You got it. So Barbara, we still need to discuss officially summer schedule?
Yeah, so I would just motion to cancel, according to what I've been told, July 11th and August 8th. And just state for the record that July 25th and August 22nd will be the 2 summer zoning board of appeal meetings.
Boys. Okay. All right, gang, so we talked about a summer schedule, right?
Yep.
So I am going to make a motion to cancel the meeting on 7/11 and on 8/8.
I'll second it.
Second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And then also that we will retain, right, Barbara, the 7/25 meeting and the 8/22 meeting.
Correct.
We will meet on those dates. So there'll be one meeting in July and one meeting in August.
Does that have to be a motion too?
No, it's part of that motion.
Okay? Okay,
And we will set, she'll change the schedule on the
website,
website and get that out to
okay,
the public.
Okay.
okay, so we're good, right? All right, have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to
Do I have a
adjourn.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you.